That's it. We need to take him somewhere uncomplicated. Somewhere away from technology.
Classic plainness, as exemplified by regions like dwellings of simplicity.
Dwellings of simplicity. Castravalva.
No, on second thoughts, let's not go to Camelot. It is a silly place.
Right.
Good evening and welcome to episode 52 of an Unearthly podcast, recording live on Wednesday, April 16th, 2014, and featuring Castravalva, written by Christopher Bidmead. As ever, you can follow us on twitch.tv/madmat2185, facebook.com/unearthlypodcast, twitter.com/unearthlypod, and you can view our YouTube playlist at t.co/K Y capital A Q O capital F U E O L. And yes, that is case sensitive, I am afraid. I am the Man in Black, and with us back from Odyssey Con are Mad Matt.
Hello.
Ron San.
Always a pleasure.
And Romeo Moon.
Hello.
So we tried to talk about a little bit about OddCon with our not quite recorded take on this episode. Do you guys want to go over an abbreviated version of that again with some input from Aaron this time?
Sure. OddCon happened. It was cool. There were a lot of panels.
A lot of Doctor Who panels.
Very abbreviated version.
I'm trying. We do have a lot of things to cover tonight, and we'll actually be having a 4-person discussion on Castravalva, so I'm trying to give us as much time as possible.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of panels. A lot of them were Doctor Who. I moderated 2 of them. We did Doctor Who Radio, which basically became a unofficial Doctor Who recordings thing, because I talked about everything from the audio-visual days to Big Finish and, real time, that kind of thing, Bill Baggs. And we had Doctor Who villains, which we talked about villains. We had a Evolution of the Daleks. And we had other British shows that were not Doctor Who, where we talked about things like Red Dwarf and Blake 7 and Life on Mars and everything else that's out on coming out of the BBC and Dave and everything else in England.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I was double booked. I was double booked for a few panels on a few different days. I was triple booked on Sunday.
Yeah, but that was kind of an internal issue that's going to be fixed.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It should be, especially if I wind up heading one of their programming paths.
Mm-hmm. And I ran my 2 panels for the convention. Tokusatsu actually had a decent showing, but then again, it was the only thing going at the time, so... But the fact that people actually showed up on Friday for it is kind of short of amazing.
Is that on your Blip channel, or no?
No, it was. I did not record it. It was just a podcast. It was just a panel. Just a regular panel. And Aaron actually did help co-host that one, I believe, a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we did our regular MMO panel.
Which all 3 of us hosted
this
on.
This time, Matt hosted this one, and it was not part of the lounge leads that we normally do at GeekCon.
Mm-hmm.
Although we should really do a lounge leads panel at some point, I would think. Maybe, if you're up to it, that is, Aaron.
Well, we should see how we should see how the upcoming GeekCon and our plans this year go
Yeah. Test
before
the water.
deciding whether we're going to be trying to do any other broadcasting from GeekCon.
Oh yeah. Oh, you mean broadcasting a Lounge Leads podcast from GeekCon? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not totally sold on the being able to actually broadcast it live from the convention, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure with a big enough memory card, I could record the entire thing live and then pass it off to somebody to edit down to a reasonable amount.
It all depends on how good our internet is at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And again, I
And-
would not have a panel much longer than 2 hours. Anywho,
Yeah, when we weren't in panels, we mostly hung out in the land room where we played a Starship Bridge simulator, and then Matt and I had fun playing Halo.
and one of the kids that joined us has been playing Left 4 Dead with me and Aaron now lately.
Yep.
And he has tried joining AO, and he has also joined Lotro.
Mhm.
Okay. Other than that, I ate a lot of chili dogs. Oddcon has a con suite. It's to the point now where I can't look at a chili dog, and this is weird for me since chili dogs are my meal of choice.
Overdid it, hey.
Yeah, I think
I
they
love
overdid it.
chili dogs, but every time I eat them, I have Sonic animated flashbacks.
Sad AM flashbacks.
And
Mhm.
I expect to be able to sprint really fast, and it never happens.
You do realize that the voice of Sonic from the old Sad AM was the same guy that did Urkel in Family Matters, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Most of us do, yes. We're a bunch of nerds.
Hey, I never know when that piece of random trivia will be new to somebody.
And just watch the
I know,
dumbfounded
I
look on
know.
their
It
face.
knocked me for a loop when I found out.
It knocked me for a loop at first, but I'm like, you know what? I can kind of hear it, yeah.
But yeah, I can't look at a chili dog at the moment. I've been reading regular hot dogs. I just can't put chili on them at the moment.
Nacho
Although,
cheese for me.
Speaking of chili dogs, minor tangent, but I swallowed a chili dog in 5 seconds the other day, which is not entirely uncommon for me. But I'm pretty sure I then experienced heartburn for the first time in my life, which is a sad reminder that,
You're getting old.
granted, this is probably nothing to you. Yes, exactly.
You're getting old. I experienced mine for the second time last weekend.
Mhm.
Granted, I
yeah,
think this is one of the rare occasions that I'm the youngest person in the room, but still.
yeah. So after eating chili dogs for 3 days at OddCon, my roommate proceeds to make chili 2 days later, which means chili dogs here. So it's like I had like about a week straight of chili dogs, and now I'm like, okay, I'll take anything but a chili dog right now.
How about some chili and
Oh,
cornbread?
chili dogs.
Chili and cornbread's awesome. I'll do that, man. Chili and potatoes, chili and rice. I mean, that's fine, just as long as it's not chili on a hot dog.
So the hot dog's fine, the chili's fine, but you just don't want them together right now.
Not right now. Probably not for another week.
They need a little time apart.
They're
Just
still
taking a
best
break
friends,
right
but
now.
they just can't talk to each other right now.
Um,
Anyway,
Other than that, yeah, OddCon was fun, interesting. It was remarkably too short because we felt like we just got there when we left. The Sunday morning, Aaron and I went out for breakfast. We witnessed a car accident actually happen. It was
No,
not a
wasn't it-
multiple car accident. It was
Yeah.
somebody's blew an engine or a tire, but yeah, it was kind of interesting. I've never actually
It was
seen
like-
it happen in front of me before.
Yeah, it was like an
Oh, I've
axle.
seen that.
Their axle actually came loose or something.
It was weird. And then afterwards, Aaron and I had sushi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen someone blow a tire on the highway.
So all in all, a good time was had by all. And
Which is a
probably
really
be working at
awkward.
it next year.
I almost feel like that is an anti-segue that kind of makes me want to skip our next topic.
but we might as well get it out of the way.
Because, as usual, as is distressingly usual, we open with Lost Stories, our segment on faces in Doctor Who that are no longer with us this week. Well, not necessarily this week, as it's actually been 2.5 weeks since our last stream, so we have actually had 2 names to add to the wall during that amount of time.
But thankfully, not anyone yet in the last 5 days.
No, right.
so
We don't have a third
we'll-
one, thankfully.
And this segment is brought to us by Thompson's Funeral Parlor, Thompson's online funeral parlor. Good for your friends, good for your family. Check out our group rates and family prices.
And this might be, I don't know. Well, I don't know if it's a first, but this is relatively unusual for this segment in that there's no news of cancer,
As of yet.
which, as we know, is something that BBC Studios seems to have been a great cause of, unfortunately.
Yeah, that seems to have fallen a great many Doctor Who actor in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Enough
but
that
our,
I've been. So who do we got? Oh yes, number 1 is the big name that died in the last 2.5 weeks is Kate O'Mara, who you will know as the Ronnie.
Yeah,
Died
not
at-
tomorrow.
Yeah, Kate O'Mara as the Ronnie died at age 74
Yep.
of illness, ongoing illness.
Yeah.
Apparently.
As you may know, if you've paid attention to this podcast, I consider 80 to be the benchmark for having a good run. So Kate fell a little short there.
Just a little bit. Of course, my benchmark is higher, but then again, I have family members who have lived into their hundreds, so...
Oh, I'm not saying that it's a full potential. 80 is just a point that you can say they've had a good life. 20 years ago, it would have been about 65. So bumping it up to 80 is average for me.
Yeah.
Mind you, I have had relatives that's lived into the hundreds too. Apparently, only the females in our family do this. All the males tend to die by 65. I'm hoping to break said trend because I don't plan on dying ever.
Who wants to live forever?
Bite me, Matt. There can be only one.
There can be only one Highlander.
Okay, so our next death is a very minor one in Doctor Who. He's only had a couple of things that he's done. He wrote one episode and acted a bit part in another. And that's Glyn Jones, who was 82.
Of the Space Museum and the Centauran Experiment, respectively.
Mm-hmm. He actually did have a named character, so he was maybe third tier at best in that particular episode, but he was actually a named character, so he wasn't just an extra, at least.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who wrote the doc. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Just go ahead.
He's the one who wrote the. Okay, he's the one who wrote the Doctor goofing off and going inside a Dalek costume. Although apparently much of the comedy of that script was cut by story editor Dennis Spooner.
Too bad. If the original existed, it would have been great for Geekon's comedy theme this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially if it was high on the comedy end.
Yeah, I kind of realized this week that there isn't that many high comedy episodes of Doctor Who.
There are very funny moments, don't get us wrong, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's very funny moments, but
Do
there's
you
not
consider
any...
The Chase to be a slapstick comedy?
Oh.
I'm sure if you add the Benny Hill theme here and there, and I'm sure you could easily do it.
True.
But no, I'm not going to be dubbing the Benny Hill theme over an episode of Doctor Who for my viewings room, Matt.
You could for mine.
Really?
It came from the internet.
I kill you, Matt. I kill you, steal your stuff.
Actually, yeah, that would be it came from the
be
internet
Sean
video.
Connery.
Just 5 minutes of the Benny Hill theme with Doctor Who imagery.
I kill you.
But then you'd have to run the room on your own without my DVDs.
I could find a replacement. You can be replaced or your position eliminated.
So you say, but who's gonna buy the DVDs?
Anyway, he was 82, so he had a good run at it. I don't really have
His
anything to
death
say
was,
about this. I think he
peacefully
died
at
of
home.
natural causes. Yeah.
Yeah, he died of
Yeah.
natural causes, which is also, again, unusual.
So, kudos to him.
Well, he didn't spend as much time in BBC studios, possibly as some larger Doctor Who names.
As
Yeah.
like the actors, he had probably a day, maybe two of filming. Whereas, the rest of these people are in there week after week.
But he was also a writer, so he was obviously in their buildings for a while at some point, but not on the
I'm shocked that
sets.
Tom Baker has made it as old as he has. He might really be a Time Lord.
Sleeps in a time capsule.
Oh. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say on this one. Why don't we move on, Bill?
Happier
Yep.
things.
So on to happier news. We get a pair of birthdays. And this is Peter Davison and Peter Capaldi. I guess someone knew that both Peters in Doctor Who had birthdays within a day of each other.
I don't have
So
a link
on,
for this, by the way.
No, I didn't save a link. But there are
that's
images. I think you Google it. On the 13th, Peter Davison turned 63. And the following day, Peter Capaldi turned 56.
When was Hartnell's birthday?
I'm not sure. You want to know if it was before November, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Let's see. Oops, I just searched for his name without any further information. That will not give me what I want.
Because if William Hartnell was 55 on November 23rd, this does mean Peter Capaldi is technically older than Hartnell at the time of first airing.
He was born on 8 January 1908. So he would have been a few serials in by the time he turned 56.
So there we go. Capaldi wins.
Capaldi is now the oldest Doctor.
He is now the official old fart doctor. Well, how old?
Except for John Hurt.
Except for John Hurt.
John Hurt, who did technically come on.
So I guess John Hurt is considered granddad.
Still, he's younger than than the second youngest Doctor ever is now, so he's not too old.
Yes, but Peter Davidson started in, 82, 83? That particular season?
Yeah. I think it was late 81 or
late
early
81
82.
was the regeneration, and then 82 was the proper beginning of his run.
I couldn't remember if that was one of the seasons that started in November and December or if it started in January.
I think Logopolis ended in November, and so I don't think the next one begun until later in 82. Either way, that means that it is 32 years ago that he started as the Doctor. That's a long freaking time. 82, 92. Yeah.
4 January 1982. Oh, wow. We actually... Oh, never mind. I was going to say we didn't have any Doctor Who in 1981, but we had at least half a season in 1981. That was just the end of season 18.
Yeah, it was the end of Tom Baker's run. So, yeah, that was 32 years ago. So, yeah, he's had time to age up.
Yeah.
If Hartnell was alive, how old would he frickin' be? He was 55 and
over
63.
100.
He
would be 106 3 months ago.
Yep. That's something to think about.
He's as old as my great-grandmother.
So, it's not to see these doctors that's played 30 years ago being older than the ones currently playing old farts in this is pretty much as it goes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's going to be interesting to see what Capaldi's age is going to do for his character. Whether it's going to be a part or if he is still going to play it a little zanier like the younger doctors we've had in the last almost 10 years. Dear Lord, has it been almost 10 years now?
Mm-hmm.
This will have been 9 years since Doctor Who came back.
Yeah.
Wow. Kind of a little mental, what the hell, guys?
And yet it still feels young compared to the classic series.
Well, yeah. You think about it, the classic series just turned 50. And that was in its 8th year of 8.5 of the current one, so it's only a very small chunk of this whole huge franchise that is Doctor Who.
New Who just celebrated its 9th anniversary.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember when Rose came out. Of course, I remember when Rose broke Street. Those of you not familiar with the story, an unfinished copy of Rose hit the internet about 2 weeks prior to its official release date.
Mm-hmm.
Things that were not in place were the Murray Gold theme. Instead, it was using the Tom Baker era theme. And a few other pieces of the soundtrack were not in place yet. So apparently that was the last thing to go into Doctor Who was the music. And what awesome music it is.
Yep.
I think we're covered birthdays now.
Yep.
I'm going to go on to Legos. We have another proposed set which has received sufficient support to move on to the next step.
So it's going into the review process, which I believe they said takes about 5 months. Yep. And then they're going to decide whether to fully accept that one and go forth with Doctor Who Legos. This is, as mentioned, one of 2 proposals. We talked about the other one a few weeks ago. And this looks like that means there's probably definitely going to be an official Doctor Who Lego set.
Yeah, and we've looked at this one, and I think our general opinion was that most of us like this better than the other one, especially the TARDIS console itself, other than the fact that there are less characters included in this proposal, so there's less to see.
Yeah, but that could be expanded on later.
Yeah.
True.
That doesn't bother me that much. We had major issues telling the characters apart in the last set.
Yeah.
So I would love to see.
That's part of the how many characters. When you only have one blonde, it's easier to tell which character's which, versus having several blondes, several redheads, and so forth.
Yeah, it was very interesting to note though that Matt Smith was absent from this proposal.
That's true, yeah.
We had a David Tennant, we had a Peter Capaldi, but we did not have a Chris Eccleston. We did not have a Matt Smith.
I don't think we have a John Barrowman either.
No, but you'll know he'll be out there. He's a popular enough figure, and of course that'll lead to the Torchwood spin-off set.
Yeah.
And possibly the Sarah Jane Adventures spin-off set. This is Lego after all.
This one does have Tom Baker with interchangeable scarves.
Awesome.
And a removable hat.
I think the other one had a removable hat too, but we couldn't really tell because it seemed to have been cut and pasted into the picture.
Yeah, it looked very photoshopped, and not to mention it looked like it was made out of metal instead of an actual hat.
What I would really like to see, the TARDIS console looks really awesome, but what I would love to see is a interchangeable part TARDIS console set. So you could make so it had like the same base, but you could make the console look like either of Matt Smith's consoles or David Tennant's console or John Hurt's console, or even if they wanted to get really creative, go back to the classic consoles.
I just like the fact that the TARDIS can fold out into the background wall. That's all I really care about. That's something that you don't normally see too much in Lego.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Although it does kind of turn the TARDIS into a transformer.
Which I've already seen TARDIS Transformers.
It's just wrong.
Especially
that would
if
be an
Michael Bay got
interesting
hold of the
set,
TARDIS.
though. See, I went the other direction. I'm picturing like the Master's TARDIS transforming into Megatron.
But then who would be? Was it Unicron? The planet eating
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be Gallifrey, maybe?
Yeah.
No. That would be the Nightmare Child.
Do we know what the Nightmare Child looks
They're
like?
not going to show us what the Nightmare Child looks like.
Except we know that it was large enough that Davros' ship was supposedly sucked into it.
Yeah.
So, therefore, it has to be on that huge galactic scale.
That's not saying that he couldn't have been flying a small one-man fighter in order to
Except
get
for the
past
fact
Lord's defenses.
it couldn't have been a one-man fighter because Dalek, which Dalek was it? Sek? Thay, I think.
Oh, Dalek Khan pulled him out of it? Is that what you mean?
Yes. So he had to have appeared there and somehow time shifted Davros there. So it had to have been big enough to accommodate both Davros and Dalek Khan at that time. I'm sorry, I get the Cult of Skaro confused. I'm bad with names.
I'm usually bad with names, but I would think you'd remember Khan of all of them.
I'm good with Khan! Because Davros kept repeating Khan's name during Journey's End.
Mm. See, it would have been great if they'd gotten him voiced by Ricardo Montalban.
At least it wasn't Benedict Cumberbatch.
No, I don't like his Khan.
Although I don't think his career had actually started yet on the BBC at that point.
Nope.
No.
Or if it had, not much. He definitely wasn't the figure he is now.
No, it was still a couple years pre-Moffat, and I think Moffat was going for a year before Sherlock.
Sounds about right, because Series 3 of Sherlock was this December.
Yeah, so probably, unless they started more or less at the same time and they took a year off, which is possible too. But it's something like that.
Sherlock didn't have any split seasons, though.
Mm.
Kind of hard when you have 3 episodes per season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Albeit, aren't they long episodes?
Yeah, they're movies, essentially.
They're essentially movies, yeah. TV movies, pretty much. Maybe End of Time Part 1 length? Or maybe a little bit longer, I'm not sure.
So, hour and a half, basically?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, give or take.
So,
between an hour and a half.
So basically, size of 2 normal episodes, 3 movies. That's a 6-episode series, essentially, budgeted-wise. And that's average for the BBC, if you look at top tier.
Yeah, you could call it that. On to our next bit of news. We have some Series 8 news. And to continue with our 2s, we have 2 bits of casting news. Although one of them actually does include a few more names. The one that's appearing in the Mark Gatiss episode. I think that one has a few more names mixed in with the headline.
Okay, so let's deal with the first one first, and that's Ben Miller.
Yep.
To guest star in Doctor Who.
He achieved fame as half of the comedy duo Armstrong and Miller before success in dramas. So I imagine that he's probably fairly known to British audiences. I've never heard of him. I think last week we discussed and none of us have.
I don't think so.
I don't know him by name, but I do know I've heard of Primeval. Apparently it's really popular in Britain.
Okay.
Yeah, it did fairly well on BBC America, too.
I've watched Primeval.
Okay.
A little bit of it.
Do you remember Ben Miller's role in it at all?
No.
Yeah.
She probably wouldn't know him by name
James
either.
Lester.
It sounds familiar.
So he's apparently a main character.
I believe we all had hopes that, unlike the last big comic name to appear in a single episode, that he does not play an Absorbaloff.
Correct. That was the first thing that my mind went to when I heard that he played comedy was the big deal they made about the comic actor that wound up playing the Absorbaloff, and how epic fail that was.
Yeah.
second worst
Oh.
episode of the new series of Doctor Who. And
Hold
was
up.
the worst
I wouldn't
episode
exactly
until
blame the
Journey.
comedian though. I would be blaming more the writing.
Oh yeah, that yeah.
That
His
had to be
acting was
RTD's worst
great.
episode ever.
His acting was
Either-
great, but it was based
Either
off
I
of the material
misread-
given him.
Hold up. Give me just a second, because I think I might have found... Oh, no, I might have... Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. I think I might have just realized something. But I have to...
The
skim
difficult
through
thing
the
with
article.
Primeval is that after a couple of episodes, they go and they kind of remake the series, kind of. And at least that's how it feels. That's how it feels like. Because like they find the professor in who's been traveling like through these wormholes or something like that. It's kind of hard to remember. I really didn't like the series actually. I thought it was kind of not very well done.
Okay, I might have been slightly misremembering something, because I'm seeing that the Ben Miller article mentions that he's the villain of the Mark Gatiss episode, apparently, which I thought the person in the other article was, but I'm not seeing anything actually saying he was the villain, so I might have mixed the two together in my mind.
You
I
do get
think that's-
confused once in a
I
while.
think that is what made me concerned, is the fact that he's playing the villain.
Oh yeah, that especially if he's playing the villain.
Yeah, so he's not playing a
They-
lovable comedic character.
They describe him as we knew we needed somebody special to send everybody behind the sofa. So that's what Ben Miller was brought in for.
We'll see about that.
Stephen Moffat hasn't managed to send anybody behind the sofa since he took over.
Pretty much.
A lot of people feel that way about the Angels, though. So
What?
Mhm.
That they're behind this.
hiding behind the sofa.
I'll admit that about Blink. Blink was frightening.
Yeah, Blink
I
was really
don't think
damn
it was
good.
quite as frightening as his first outing in Empty
Well,
Child.
If it weren't for the fact that the Angels make no sense by the time Flesh and Stone comes around, the whole thing about the angel and the eyeball I could kind of see as that, but it made I spent most of that episode like going, that makes no sense, so I couldn't really be as scared of it.
Yeah, the second story I could not extend my disbelief
I
of.
spent most of the second story fuming at River's song, so
No, I can forgive River
one
Song.
comment
It's
about
the
the
angels that were jerking my chain and getting me annoyed.
it was that comment about the TARDIS breaks.
That
yeah.
yeah.
It just immediately set me on edge with her. I'm like, yeah, and the fact that she says it so smugly.
Yeah.
Fuck her, it's not even the breaks, so
It's like, okay, I hate you now.
So, I think what basically happened is she made something up to impress her husband.
to which her husband is
that-
not impressed because he knows it's not the breaks. So smeg it.
It just annoyed me because it was just kind of like, no, you are not saying that about that noise. No. And
Right.
it just, from that point on, I knew I was already gritting my teeth at the episode, and everything that happened in it, just every flaw just became crystal clear.
Before we go off on our various River Song rants, let's go on to the next piece of news,
Okay.
which is that Tom Riley is also going to be appearing in the third episode, which is Gaddis penned of Series 8. He's been in various roles that I know those of us who were here last week, I don't think any of us were familiar with any of them. I don't know if Aaron's seen any of them.
Oh no.
Trevor Cooper is another name that will be in the episode, and he played Takis in Revelation of the Daleks. That was, I think we said, he was the one who turned on Davros. Is that what we finally...
Yes, he was the one that stormed, basically betrayed Davros to the renegade Dalek faction.
So
Or
that
the ones who would become the renegade Dalek faction, yeah.
Right. Ian Halland, who played director Richard Martin in An Adventure in Space and Time, will be in the episode. David Benson of Goodnight Sweetheart, Sabrina Bartlett of Suspects, and Roger Ashton Griffiths of numerous film roles.
Including The Brothers Grimm and Gangs of New York. Wow, that's actually some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
And
sure
not
about
just
Brothers
Brothers
Grimm,
Grimm,
but
that's
yeah,
Terry
Gangs of New York I
Gilliam's
remember being a
The
big
Brothers
thing.
Grimm, so...
I'm not sure about Brothers
The
Grimm, but
article
I know
also
that...
goes on to mention that we have a Gareth Roberts episode coming in episode 6. He was the writer of The Shakespeare Code, The Unicorn and the Wasp, Planet of the Dead, The Lodger, and Closing Time, as well as numerous Sarah Jane Adventures episodes.
So does that mean that we're going to see more of what's-his-face?
No, I
Craig?
think he died. I think he died in Closing Time when he became a Cyberman and then fought it from the inside.
I didn't think that happened in that.
Yeah,
Haven't seen it. It was part of the season I
Because
didn't
at the
see.
end of it, because at the end of it, Matt Smith hands him back his child and basically says, "Yeah, he recognizes his own name now."
I forgot the post climax ending to that. I haven't watched that. I only watched that episode once, I think, so I'm not certain.
It's part of the season
Matt
I
hasn't
haven't
seen it
watched.
at all. Yeah.
I might watch it twice, but if so, I don't really remember.
Part of a half a season I haven't seen, so I can't really say.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but honestly,
the
I'd
TARDIS
rather
data
something
core
more
lists him as a
along the line
companion.
of, mhm.
One
Yeah,
at a
I've
time.
seen a few things list him as that.
I think that's a little much.
Yeah, he's not a companion yet. He hasn't even been around for more than one episode.
I'd kind of rather see another pseudo historical from him, though, honestly. But time
Yeah,
will tell.
yeah. I know the reason I'm mentioning this is because Craig is really popular with the fan base, and Moffat knows that.
He's popular with portions of it, and he's just as despised by the people who hate those particular 2 episodes.
I'm not overly fond of them, but I'm not overly hating of them.
I feel the same way as you, honestly.
I would be fine if he came back for a 3rd episode. I wouldn't mind to see what's up with Stormageddon. Looking at the other episodes that he did.
He's apparently a big fan of J.K. Rowling and Agatha Christie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both kind of had a literary theme as well as a historical, didn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be good to have a little more historical theme in Doctor Who. At the same time,
especially since most of our historicals lately have been Vastra stories.
Yeah,
and neither of them were the best pseudo historicals we've had.
No, they haven't been, and but at the same time, I find a lot of Roberts' stuff to be kind of mediocre. I do not think the Shakespeare Code was the greatest thing ever.
Although we have friends that would say otherwise, but yeah.
It had its flaws, but it was okay for what it was. Once you're able to get past that whole using words instead of numbers for math and therefore being able to change reality, if you're able to suspend your disbelief for that, then the episode is...
Oh, no, that's not my issue with it at all. I was able to suspend my disbelief for that, no problem. My problem was with the actual Carrionites themselves. I don't know, but then again, I think that was part of the RTD era's touch of camp, so...
Yeah, they were. I think they were based off of.
They were based off the Three Witches from Macbeth, but they were a little over the top.
Mm-hmm.
Was my issue.
Oh yeah, that part didn't bother me at all. That was part of the era.
However, the Unicorn and the Wasp, actually, that's also from the RTD era. I found to be a little bit more confusing.
I got through just fine.
Well, it was about mystery. I mean, granted, yeah, it's intended to be a mystery plot, but enough of the result comes completely out of left field that it's hard to really.
Yeah, that was kind of my problem with it. I mean, I was looking forward to the Doctor sitting down and actually solving an Agatha Christie style mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead, I got this out of left field.
Which, although I mean, Moffat would be all for that. He does Sherlock and everything, so I could kind of see him being like, yeah, do that, do what you were gonna do with Agatha Christie but didn't, and do that. So
Because yeah, I would love to see something like that.
That's assuming
because
story editing.
that is kind of what the Talons of Wang Chiang is the Doctor sitting down and kind of dealing with a Sherlock Holmes-esque problem. It still has an alien solution, but the alien solution's not out of left field. Whereas Unicorn the Wasp just kind of throws it at you. All of a sudden, there are no clues or anything leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my issue with it.
Yeah.
So, I'm not too fond of Roberts. I hope he can do better. I'm still thinking he's above the par of Gaddis and Moffat at this point.
By the way,
I would be looking forward to his
Sarah
work.
Jane Adventures all the way, correct or no?
Yes, I did.
How did you feel about his Sarah Jane Adventures episode?
I don't know which ones he did. I would have to look him up and find out which episodes he penned. Because
I'd up, we'll probably move on, so I won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guest stars for the Gareth Roberts episode include Nigel Betts of Emmerdale, Edward Harrison of many stage roles as well as appearing in Doctors, Andy Gillies, who appeared in Love Soup, Ellis George, and Jimmy V, who you might know from Doctor Who in such roles as The Grask, The Mox of Balhoun in Series 1, and Banacafalata. Did I get that right?
Oh, yeah.
Banacafalata, Voice of the Damned.
Voice of the Damned, yes. The little red guy,
Mm-hmm.
who is not a case.
Who's not a what?
he's your standard small person actor.
Yeah.
In there, so he's probably either going to play something under a lot of makeup or play your average small person. We don't know which.
And as of April 2nd, when this article posted, apparently the second production block was filming. So I'm not sure how long that is, if it would have ended by now, but that's how
it depends on when the second production block started.
Right. It just says now taking place, and that was as of 2 weeks ago today.
Yeah, I think it's probably done by now, and they'll probably start the third production block in the beginning of May. Because they're probably taking off for Easter holiday now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so they probably scheduled the block to get done just prior to Easter holiday, so that they'll probably take like the week off for Easter and then come back to start filming block 3 after that. That's, however, a guess on my part.
To go on past Series 8, we do have some other New Who news, and that is that subscriptions for the 10th and 11th Doctor comics, the new lines that were recently commissioned, or recently... the new comic lines are now open for subscriptions, and there is an early bird offer for, it looks like 10% off if you get a 15-episode prescription. That's US. Canada has same deal, and actually New Zealand and Australia have the same deal. I don't see any mention of... only digital copies will be available in the UK. So...
And yeah, Ireland.
I wasn't sure what that was supposed to be referring to. Okay.
Yeah, EIRE is Ireland.
Gotcha.
It's basically the part of Ireland that's not under the dominion of the UK, which is, only the UK only has North Ireland.
Right.
There's been, there was a huge terrorist war in the 80s over that stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's 15 issues for $53.99 is probably 12 regular issues, an annual, and probably like 2 seasonal issues or something. Because I suspect they're doing a 1-year rotation on that.
Oh, and the U.S. special includes a free action figure of whichever Doctor you're subscribing to.
So if you want both the 10th and 11th Doctor series, that's 107, almost $108.
Yeah, $108.
It's a bit much for comics.
That's for 30 issues and 2 figures.
Yeah, that's a bit much for comics.
Now I have no
Oh,
idea. I have no idea anything about the figures, and if
I'm
we
looking
didn't
them up
have
right
as much
now. I can tell you about the figures right now. They
briefly.
Do you I'm trying to remember what they're called. Do you know how they have those vinyl figures that are kind of like chibi form? It's
Yes.
kind of like those.
So it's not a
It's not like a highly
rare
detailed figure,
collectible thing
no.
that you're going to go out of your way for. It's not a sideshow collectible or anything close to halfway close to that.
No, it's essentially like a little like 2 or 3 inch, actually more like yeah, like 3 or 4 inch figure that vinyl that might also come with a sonic screwdriver from what I'm seeing here. But it's a very cheapified version of the Doctors.
So don't
Okay.
subscribe to those.
If you're looking for a really cool action figure, this is not it.
Okay.
Okay.
I would refer to you to go to a convention and pick them up for like maybe $10.
On to our next bit, we've got some classic Who news, and that is Derek Sherwin's memoirs.
Derek Sherwin was apparently a writer, story editor, and then briefly the showrunner during the second and third Doctor eras.
He was the
He
producer of The War Games and Spearhead from Space.
and he credits himself as as creating both Unit and the Time Lords, and
To some degree, yes.
he might have been involved to some degree, but I think he's touting himself bigger than what he's saying.
What was that? I don't know if
Or
that's what,
I think I'm saying he's
or at
touting
least
himself
what
bigger than what he is.
his marketing team is crediting to him at the very least. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'd go
Yeah.
all out to say it was him. Um,
Yeah,
apparently mentions
I'm
he is
looking
the
at the
early the
I'm looking at the cover of his book. Yeah, the man who took Doctor Who into a
right.
golden decade.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's a little
granted,
much.
the author usually has very little control over what actually appears on the jacket of the book. So I'm trying to give him a credit that his head's not that big.
Maybe.
It does mention he is the earliest Doctor Who producer that is still living.
Yeah, because we lost Dole Verity, and still, I'm thinking that it's going to be it's a bit much. Um,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
would love
entirely
to see,
sure
I would
how
love to see
interested Doctor Who fans are going to be because I'm not entirely sure it's going to be as much as they expect out of it.
yeah, I would love to see a memoir of someone like Russell T Davies, who recreated the show from scratch.
Right.
While this guy
That's
was a
that
part of a very important part of the Doctor Who history, wasn't there for very long.
Yeah, I would have loved to see, like Robert Holmes or Terrence Dicks do a memoir too. Because both of those were,
That's
showrunners in very historic eras.
that said, if you want to order a signed copy, I'm assuming OS stands for overseas, so you're pretty much looking at about $40 to order a signed copy from the US. Give or take, that's a rough estimate based on a very very rough calculation of 26.99 pounds to American dollars.
Yeah, I think it's going to be closer to 37, but yeah, like 37.50, 38, something like that. But yeah,
Yet
it's going to
still, the
be
pound has gone down since the last time I looked it up because I thought a pound was about $1.50.
it fluctuates, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does.
General rule of thumb I usually think is 1.6, but I don't know what it is at the moment.
So yeah, then it would be just over $40.
Let's move on from that.
Yeah, which beyond that we've got some Day of the Doctor news. It was nominated for yet another award, this time in the FreeSat Awards for the Best of British category.
And it's up against Sherlock, which seems to be its regular opponent.
This year,
Yeah.
yes.
Strictly Come Dancing.
Never heard of it.
Ant and Dec's Saturday Night Takeaway.
Never heard of it.
And Downtown Eddie. Ant and Dec are a kind of a relatively popular comedy duo.
Mm.
From what I hear, Downton Abbey is the next big thing that everyone's been talking about in terms of British television this year, at least from what I've seen on Facebook. So,
is it a soap or what is it?
It's
I
like
honestly am not
upstairs.
sure.
I've seen the first 2 seasons of it. I've not seen season 3 yet, but it is like upstairs downstairs. If you remember that TV show from PBS.
Barely.
It's about how the servants. It's about how the servants' lives tie into their lords and their ladies' lives, and it takes place in a stately, one of the large estates out in kind of the English countryside. Kind of, there's a small town nearby.
I thought for a moment there you were going to say it takes place in stately Wayne Manor.
No. No, but it is an actual castle or large house or however you want to put it as. But I really like the series. It is kind of a little soap opera-ish. I heard, especially for the second or the third season, it's kind of like that.
Okay,
But,
so it's going in the realm of the soap opera. So we're looking at something that may become the next Coronation Street, or something along those lines.
But the historical.
Guys, it's already huge. Like it was a big series like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Like,
but
it's kind of
when I see the next big thing, I mean that basically for the past 12 months, I've seen it pretty much blow up over Facebook.
Yeah,
I've seen it. People I knew were talking about it like I said 2 years ago. Like you can even see it mentioned on Penny Arcade.
It started in 2010. It started in 2010, so it's
two
going
or three
for
years
its
ago, yeah.
Okay,
it's going
so
for
it's
its
been
5th
going that
series
long.
this year. But
So
when
it's
I'm talking
basically
about
going
Coronation Street, I'm talking about the soap opera that has run for like 30 years now. That's what I mean by big thing.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, I don't know it's going to be lasting that long.
So just because of the fact that it's been going as long as Moffat Who and seems to have somewhat slighter mainstream impact, if I've only became aware of it this year and it's been going that long, I would say Doctor Who probably doesn't have that much reason to be afraid of it unless Sherlock splits the Doctor Who vote and Downton Abbey takes the remainder.
Yeah, I know, because, I don't know, it's people like Downton Abbey, I think, because of the historical stuff that goes on with it, too. There's a lot of references to large, big historical events, like in the first episode we learn about Titanic sinking, and the fact that the fiancé of one of the, ladies of the house was aboard the Titanic.
Doctor Who used to do things about historical events.
Yeah.
The only reason I know anything about Downton Abbey, and it took me a while to actually even remember it, is because I occasionally watch late night stuff with my buddy Mike on Thursdays, and one of the things I saw was that they took a clip from Downton Abbey and they suddenly just made the video go quiet as people are looking at each other and played porn music.
Maybe for the next Children in Need special, we'll do a Downton Abbey Doctor Who crossover.
Oh God, no.
That would actually be pretty awesome. That would actually probably bring in a lot of people.
And
I mean,
no, but
Randy's response means he knows exactly what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, Aaron, after Doctor Who was canceled in '89, there was a brief anniversary show called Dimensions in Time.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That was a crossover between Doctor Who and what was the soap opera?
EastEnders.
EastEnders.
EastEnders, yes. I haven't seen it, but I've seen, was it Nash's review of it?
Yeah.
I refuse to acknowledge its existence. I broke that rule to briefly explain to you what it was.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of shocked that you used its name.
Yeah, I'm only doing it as an explanation. After this, I will not be acknowledging its existence anymore.
Dimensions in Time and Space.
What now?
Adventures in Time and Space.
You said
And
Adventures in
that's-
Time and Space, right? No, it's Adventures in Space and Time. That was a great freaking anniversary show.
Adventures in Time and Space, I think, was the name of the audio series featuring the Professor and Ace.
You might be right.
Ha!
And I think that ends our news, so we can go to talking about some silly place.
Some silly place called Castravalva.
Okay, I believe it's up to me to do the summary.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was,
Yeah,
yes.
unless you're not up to doing it again after last week.
Give me just a moment. I have a candy
Okay.
bar in my mouth.
Mm.
I
have
don't wanna do a
M&Ms in my mouth.
At least nobody mentioned their nuts.
Okay, so Castravalva starts pretty much where Logopolis left off. The Fourth Doctor has just regenerated into the Fifth Doctor after falling off the top of the radio telescope, and they're all gathered around him. It cuts quickly to the group attempting to break for the TARDIS. They're having various success in this, is the fact that the local police are also involved, chasing them down. Adric and Nyssa try to briefly waylay them by telling them that they're the exact thing they've been looking for, alien intelligence, while Tegan and Adric and the Doctor make a break for the TARDIS. They're, of course, helping the Doctor, who is more or less incapacitated at this moment. Just before they arrive at the TARDIS, the Master shows up in a flashy Pillar of Doom effect and seems to materialize around Adric. A moment later, he disappears. Adric is still there, though he looks a little out of it. And quickly, they book into the TARDIS. Adric sets the TARDIS into flight and then proceeds to go wander off looking after the Doctor, who is acting very strange. He's unraveling his scarf, muttering to himself, and over the course of the next 15 minutes or so, does a successful mimic of some of the previous Doctors. Along the way, he also tries out a few things. He finds the second Doctor's recorder and fails to play it, and eventually finds what will become his new outfit, which is a basically cricketer's garb in a
Along with the
tan and
bat.
red theme. What? Along with the bat,
Along with
which
the
he
bat.
does note. Yep. Which he does note as needing a touch of linseed oil. Nyssa and Tegan eventually catch up with the Doctor, who had been separated from Adric, and he asks them to help him find the Zero Room, which is apparently a place that Time Lords go in a TARDIS when their regeneration goes a bit off. After some more stumbling around the TARDIS, Nyssa and Tegan, having marked several of the corridors with lipstick to try to find their way around, and the Doctor mistaking it for carmine seepage, they find the Zero Room, and the Doctor immediately relaxes, levitates in the air, and falls into a bit of sleep. But they don't have much time to deal with this, because pretty soon the cloister bell starts going off. They rush back to the console room and discover things have been getting hot. Quite literally, as they are falling into essentially Event 1. The Doctor, also hearing the cloister bell, makes his way back to the console room after a bit of trouble. He finds himself a electric wheelchair to help him bring the rest of the way there. And because of all the smoke, the heat, the adrenaline, his brain is working for the moment, so he manages to have the TARDIS escape Event 1, the Big Bang, by ejecting was it a quarter of the TARDIS?
Yes.
Yes.
A quarter which unfortunately wounds up being the Zero Room as well. So he is
It
without
had a
his refuge.
possibility of including the console room.
Oh yeah, it was completely at random. But the Doctor promptly passes out after that. And actually, I think he left Nyssa and Tegan to actually push the button that took out a quarter of the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
And they then try to look it up in the index file for places he can rest and find Castravalva listed. So they take their best guess and try to set coordinates for Castravalva. Adric, in the meantime, has disappeared, leaving those two to deal with it on themselves. After their attempt at landing the TARDIS goes a bit off, they manage to drag the Doctor out of the incline and make a cabinet out of the remaining doors of the Zero Room, which was all that's left. So the Doctor rests in there while Nyssa and Tegan basically carry what looks to be a giant coffin into the hills of Castravalva. They try to climb up to gain access to the city, fail, come back down, and are promptly captured by a hunting party, which takes them to see the Portreeve, who is the leader of Castravalva. The Portreeve seems to welcome them, allows them to bid them stay, much to the chagrin of the librarian, a dark, scowly-faced person who seems to object to their presence. Whether it's because he's evil or they're messing with his books, they don't know. Also, the local apothecary tries to help the Doctor with his illness, and the two begin eventually becoming friends. The Doctor recovers to some extent before he begins to notice a couple of things. One, he can only remember Nyssa and Tegan, but he seems to recall that he had 3 companions at the time. And 2, that Castravalva makes no sense. By that means...
Three things comes after 2. Oh, that's the wrong scene.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'll come in again. Anyway, so the Doctor points out what's wrong with Castravalva by drawing a map of it and showing some of the people that they can get to while, everything seems to be in one location and they have only one, but pointing out any location that's not at the center of the map will result in 4 different locations. So many of them think that that means there's something wrong with the map, but everyone else realizes that there's something wrong, in fact, with Castravalva. Meanwhile, Nyssa and Tegan are being very tight-lipped about the absence of Adric. I believe they had actually seen the fact that he had been caught in the Master's web, the Master's power web before, I think on the TARDIS screen or something.
Actually, he appeared as an image to them on the wall of the Zero Room.
Yes.
Essentially projected directly into their mind.
Yep, okay.
The fact that it's a Zero Room is all the more... If it's a Zero Room, that makes it all the more disturbing, because that's the one room that's supposed to be completely block out anything of that nature.
Yes, but block transfer computations can change the face of reality, as seen in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
We reference you to the previous episode.
Eventually the Doctor remembers that Adric's not there by idly mentioning to a girl who proves to the Doctor that she can count that she would deserve a badge for mathematical excellence, which brings him to Adric and results a confrontation between Nyssa and Tegan. The Doctor kind of realizes something's amiss and has Nyssa and Tegan take him to the Portreeve. Or so they think. In actuality, they're taking the history of Castravalva to there, a series of books which the Doctor noticed was something else that's wrong. So there were 3 things that the Doctor found out that was amiss about Castravalva. Sure. And that was the fact that the books themselves were thousands of years old, but they chronicled the events of Castravalva up to the present day.
Mm-hmm.
Think about
all of
that.
them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so
did
they
you
take
guys...
the books.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
So they take the casket to the Portreeve, who then reveals himself to be the Master.
In all his hammy glory.
Yes. The only way he could be more hammy is if he was played by Brian Blessed.
That would just mean he wouldn't have an indoor voice.
He does his little snidely whiplash routine, and of course attempts to kill the Doctor, except of course the Doctor's not there. And instead, once he's revealed himself, it begins to break the spell he has on his own creations, the people of Castravalva. And in fact, the Doctor is using the assistance of the librarian, who makes a bold self-sacrifice routine and throws himself into the Master's power web, freeing Adric. At this point, Castravalva starts folding in on itself, and everything is confusion to the eyes of the Doctor and his companions. Originally, using the apothecary, they managed to get themselves about halfway out, but then it's even confused to his eyes. Fortunately, Adric, who had basically created the town, could see the way out, and they make it out of the city before it folds in on himself. The Master, being not so lucky as they find his TARDIS, which he tried to escape in, broken down along the way. Thinking the Master is safely dead, caught in his own trap, and the Doctor, feeling much better and sprouting a stick of celery on his lapel, takes a brisk hike back to the TARDIS, where they all, of course, takes off to their next great adventure. I think that was slightly longer than the last time I tried to make this summary, but I think it's a little more accurate.
Yes.
I think it ended up being shorter because there were less interruptions.
Yeah. Sorry
Either
about
way.
that.
No, I mean, because
Okay.
last time Matt and I kept adding things, whereas this time you pretty much remembered everything we had discussed last week.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
we
good
did not
practice.
interrupt him as much this time.
Good practice. Good practice. Okay. So,
Did you-
let's get... Yeah, go ahead.
Did you see my mention to you about who that little girl was?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. You want to tell the
Yeah,
audience?
go ahead and bring it up since
You
Who
you...
have
is
found it?
she's actually the niece of the actress who played Liz Shaw.
Ah.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. I actually saw that comment mentioned on the area where I was watching it.
Was that deliberate by them, or was that coincidence?
I don't know. I didn't quite look
I-
too far into it.
I don't know, but I like how
Probably
the third
coincidence.
Doctor's companion. I like how the third Doctor's companion's niece is the one that gets to say 3 is what comes after 2.
Yes, that is
That
awesome.
itself
And that-
might have been deliberate.
Yeah, that might have
And
been
then
slightly
4,
deliberate.
then 5. And actually, yeah, she counts up to 5. I don't think she goes on to 6. So that might have been deliberate too.
I'm actually thinking you might have actually seen a little bit of an in reference that not a lot of people got.
Yeah. That is an interesting little in reference. And they hit it very well too. You'd have to be looking for it.
I
Yeah.
hadn't noticed it in 30 years.
Yeah, I had no idea about it. It's just I was
And-
reading. I like to read the comments. I'll admit I watched this on Daily Motion. This
I'm
episode.
actually
We
now,
admit to watching a lot of
tempted-
stuff on Dailymotion.
And
I'm actually
that's
now,
where I watched it as well.
tempted to go get the DVD and watch the director's commentary.
Although
It's one of
if that
yeah.
if that was an
Of course.
accident, it was a glorious one.
Yeah, if I bought Castravalva on DVD, I'd have to buy Legopolis as well because I can't have one without the other.
Yeah. And for anybody who hasn't watched it, you really do need to watch Legopolis first because this story seems to make no sense if you watch it on its own. But if you watch them together as essentially an 8-parter, it makes a lot of sense.
Which is really weird because this was actually the fourth production item in its season. It was the first aired, but it was the fourth filmed.
Yeah,
So-
just like with Matt Smith, they essentially gave Peter Davison a few stories to work out the kinks of his Doctor before going on and filming the premiere.
But, at least the 11th hour... Well, I guess the 11th hour did actually go on right where End of Time left off.
Mm-hmm.
But there was
Yeah.
enough of a transition piece there
Mhm.
that it wasn't as abrupt as... Other than, of course, the TARDIS crashing scene. But there's... this one literally feels like it's part 5 through 8 of Legopolis. It's it's literally, if you watch these back to back, you would think it was one long serial.
The only difference because even then, I mean, in the part where they would normally have played the cliffhanger over again, they show the regeneration, so that fits as well.
Mm-hmm. If you were like Lionheart, you could have easily edited those scenes together and made them make sense.
Yeah.
Lionheart Studios was the people that were in charge of Doctor Who in the 80s, and they tended to take all the serials and edit them together into a movie-length episode.
Oh, okay.
So when I was watching Doctor Who in the 80s, it was all these movie formats. I didn't realize there were half-hour breaks until the 90s.
Right.
And basically BBC Worldwide yanked it from Lionheart and came out with their own stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, why is there episode breaks in here? Where's my movie, damn it?
Although I've got to say, some episodes must be beyond tedious that way, especially in the black and white era.
Yeah, the Daleks kind of got a little long.
Well, I'm particularly thinking of the kidnap and escape ones, like the Web Planet and
Web
and
Planet was. I
Tribe of
kept
Gum.
telling you, I fell. Tribe of Gum is tolerable. It's not
'Cause it's a
wonderful, but it's
four-parter.
tolerable.
'Cause
But
it's a
no,
four-part.
Daleks was a 7-parter, if I remind you. And that bit
was,
where they were
yes, it
crawling
was.
through the caverns. They were on their way from the Thal's base to infiltrate the Dalek base.
So you almost made it.
That got a little tedious at times, especially when you were watching it, because a lot of these old serials at the time were not in the best of conditions because, of course, digital remastering hadn't come out yet.
Right.
So you're watching these.
There were also less episodes found at the time, so they might not have found as good of a quality as they found since then.
Possibly. Either way, you were watching these grainy, off-color episodes of stuff happening in the dark, and you were just like, eh. And Web Planet was in very crappy condition when it first came out. I remember looking at this going, why do I want to watch this? I don't even know what's going on anymore. I don't care.
The plot bunny has jumped out the window and left me behind.
Web Planet was one of the first episodes of Doctor Who I watched where I didn't care. And that's a very rare thing for me.
Although the ending was worth it because Barbara kicking ass.
Anyway. But no, this feels like it's an 8-part serial. And really, the story itself is in essentially 3 parts. You've got the part, the early part, which is the escape to the TARDIS from the Pharos Project. Although I don't think it's ever mentioned by name as being the Pharos Project, but you know that
in that particular episode.
I don't think it is in Castravalva, no.
Oh no, it is because they
Or
mentioned
it might be. No, it is once. Yeah, I think in the same conversation.
Pharos Project.
Yeah, and I think in the conversation where they talk about alien intelligence, they mention it.
Oh, okay. But anyway, so you've got that part. Then you've got all the stuff on the TARDIS. Actually, 4 parts. Because you've got departure from the Pharos Project, you've got all the stuff that happens on the TARDIS, you've got the trip to Castravalva, and then you've got the situation in Castravalva itself. That would be the 4 parts of the serial.
I just found out some more information on Soska John. Apparently, they did not know that she was Caroline's niece until later in the production process.
Awesome.
Yeah, but just wanted to point that out.
So I didn't know about it right away, and everything was a massive working for itself coincidence.
Considering
the dialogue itself may have been an in-joke, they just didn't know it was being mentioned by Liz Shaw's niece.
Considering the fact that we're discussing the 11th hour parallels, that's sort of like the fact that Karen Gillan ended up getting played by her own cousin who she had never met before in the 11th hour.
Bringing families together.
The family business.
Yes, bringing families
More
together
so now than ever before.
Behind the screen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you've got 4 parts. So I like to look at this on each of the 4 parts. So let's start a discussion on the bit that we have with the Pharos Project.
Not much to say. It's relatively short, though.
Yeah.
Well, I believe you had some comments on the special effects, Matt.
Yeah.
I had a comment on the special effects, I know that.
Some of the effects in particular in that portion are kind of terabad, even for its era.
That sequence did not age well. I'll leave it at that.
Which one?
When the Master's TARDIS shows up to kidnap Adric, there's this flash of special effects.
The Pillar of Doom.
It was like I don't know if it was like an energy discharge in front of it or part of the materialization effect or what, or just the effect they were using to kidnap Adric or something. But it was like it looked like a cartoon lightning bolt, pretty much.
Yeah, that's
And it had
essentially what it was.
the master laughing over it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they fixed that, if they updated the special effects on the Castravalva DVD.
They probably did.
I'm kind of interesting to note that. It's making me even more tempted to buy the DVD. But
because the really bad effects being fixed is a good thing.
Anyway, yeah. All in all, it's like I said, it's pretty much following right off Logopolis. And seem to, of course, the difference here, the big thing that you could tell difference between Logopolis and Castravalva is the soundtrack.
That, and I think either, I mean, if you assumed they were filming on the same day, which we know that it wasn't, but if as an audience member you might have assumed, you would think they got a new camera, because I think everything looked brighter in this part of Castravalva than it had in Logopolis.
Yeah, it was also looking a little more clear.
I think they did a switching of camera formats between the 81 and 82 season so that they got a different camera to do it. But other than that, you'll notice, the fact that Logopolis had kind of more of an orchestral feel. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Castravalva, who the composer was obscenely fond of woodwinds. And the woodwinds theme would continue on through this entire season. Because I know it was continuing on in Kinda.
Although for an episode that's peppered with throwbacks to past Doctors, Woodwinds works very well, because when I think of a few first and second Doctor episodes, there's a good amount of that, especially if you include the recorder.
It's a very different woodwind feel, though.
Mm-hmm.
The dark, serious tone of Logopolis is replaced by this light, airy woodwind. So if you actually edited the two together, that actually might be a bit jarring. Other than that, it seems to continue pretty much right where they came off. You can tell in the recovery scene that scene was essentially refilmed, except for Tom Baker's part, which was dubbed in from the previous.
Mm-hmm. Although we when we discussed this before, in our last attempt to stream, we talked about how it might have been an alternate take because some of the dialogue with Tom Baker on screen was slightly different from what was actually in Logopolis.
And it was the same dialogue. It's the timing of it was different.
Okay.
And it sounded to be said differently. Like the original Logopolis take, the Watcher reveal was a little more dramatic.
Yeah.
And here it seemed to be more understated. Mm-hmm. And it was either because it was a different take, or they edited it because they were compressing it for time.
Yeah, it was probably compressed for time because this is the first thing you're seeing in the episode.
Yeah, because in Logopolis that scene was a little bit drawn out, whereas here they're pretty much the Watcher. It was the Doctor all along. Move on.
Yeah, but it's I think they used an alternate take for it because the way they said it was a little different too. It wasn't stressed as much vocally.
Either that, or we mentioned they might have redubbed it over the same footage.
That's possible too. Yeah, that's possible as well. I know Tom Baker's lines were the same, but other than that, I couldn't tell you.
His line, if I'm remembering right,
it's the end.
It was just the one line,
but the moment has been prepared for. Yes. Yeah, that stayed the same. It was mostly the doctors were different.
If I can interrupt just a minute, because I'm not sure how much of a lag I have on the stream. Matt, are you still showing the 3 DVDs on the stream while I'm speaking? One thing that's always bothered me about this, especially if you treat them as a trilogy, the 4th Doctor ones are purple, and then Castravalva is pink. And if you take them as one linear story, that really bothers me.
Why is that?
Castravalva should also be purple.
That's not what the purple represents, though. You see, that color coding is by Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So that would hold the same even with the American DVDs, because the Tom Baker ones, I think, are still purple in ours. on the
Gotcha.
bottom, but I think our Peter Davidson ones are green.
Ah.
So
Okay,
this
that
is
might
the older
explain why I've seen.
DVDs.
That might explain why I've seen multiple colors for the same Doctor and thought that it had nothing to do with it. It might have just been different region versions.
Yeah, but also mind you, we don't color tint the picture. Mostly what we see on ours is the bar at the bottom.
Right.
So we would see the Tom Baker era, and then we would see the Peter Davidson era in green.
Okay. This is actually the first that was brought to my attention that the Region 1 and 2 DVDs had different casings. I kind of would have I always just thought that there were multiple releases of each one if I saw multiple pictures.
No, the UK ones
Especially
all
since there are
have the
so many
roundels on
fan
them.
versions out there. Yeah.
And actually, the American ones, I'm not sure if
thought the
the
Americans did
story
too.
number and DVD extras background color changes at all. But from what I noticed on the American releases, at least, usually the spine as well as the bottom on the front cover usually tends to be just black. So they don't even tint that for us either.
No, it's only that bar in the front.
No. Randy, I have like 5 or 6 DVDs. They're always black at the bottom, for the bottom bar, for American releases. Always, except for maybe the 5 Doctors, but that was a special release.
There's something that's color coded on those because I have like 100. Well, I don't have 150 of them. I wish I did. But...
Maybe there are multiple series of DVDs.
I'm also thinking that some of them are re-releases, though, too.
Yeah, I'm like, I know
they
some
might be
stories
black
were
barring the
released in
re-releases.
Actually, I'm thinking the black bar might be the older releases. Here, let me have a look.
No, that is not the case.
Sort of like how PlayStation, the black bar is the first copy and green bar is the second.
No, apparently Peter Davidson's in purple in the US ones. Tom Baker's in kind of a beigeish brown. Mind you, it's kind of a pinkish purple.
Okay. So yeah, I'm looking at newer releases here, my newer DVDs, and they are color coded. Paul McGann is purple, Peter Davidson's orange, and
how many
Patrick
Paul McGann
Troughton is
DVDs
blue.
are there?
One.
How many do you think there are, Paul McGann?
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, how in the world do you color code Paul McGann?
Because
you
he's
still
purple,
have to.
it's the only one.
You see, the thing is that they're color coded. At least they used to be color coded on the spine as well, so that you could have your library facing out like books, and you could tell where one Doctor ended and another began, without reading the titles.
Now I'm trying to find my older ones, and I don't know exactly where those are. Oh, here we go.
If I could see my DVDs from here, but I can't. I'm too lazy to get up and look.
Older copy of Peter Davison's stuff. Let me have a look at that. Ooh.
By the way, when Matt blames the tangents on Randy, next time remind him about going through his DVD collection.
Hey, he started it. And again, the spine is black, and actually I think the bottom part is a little bit tinted, but it's really dark.
Which DVD is that?
Earthshock.
No, my Earthshock DVD is green. I'm fairly certain.
What are the dates on the backs of your DVDs?
I don't have mine on me. It's in Arlington.
And mine is an exact copy of Randy's because I saw them both together in his little hands. And it's 1982, and by the way, it's dark blue. The big picture is tinted green a little bit, but
the DVD was not released in 1982.
But the bar below where it says the Peter Davidson years is the part that's color coded.
It's a very dark blue. It's almost black, but the spine itself is also black, and all of the spines are black.
Yeah, I know the English ones are actually color coded that way. Apparently, somebody here in the U.S. didn't get the clue.
At least it does have the photo of the Doctor above the word Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do.
Anyway.
Now I'm tempted to go through my Big Finish collection and see what they do for the Doctor, but I'm not doing it now. I will not do it
Thus it
now
begins.
because we need to move
Stop
on.
the obsessive compulsive. Let's move on.
Yes, let's please move on before I do.
I could feel the temptation in you, Bill.
We can feel it like we
Little
feel the
voices from your
force.
CD, from your Big Finish CDs, going, "Come to us, check it out, please."
I don't even remember where in the episode we were at this point. I think in the
I
beginning.
think we were closing down the Earth bit.
I think we're in like
Yes.
the opening 5 minutes or something.
And
Okay.
2.5 hours into a podcast.
Okay, so we'll move on to the TARDIS scenes.
Yeah.
This was the first time we got to see actual TARDIS corridors that weren't part of a abandoned hospital or an industrial factory. They actually had the walls with the roundels on them.
They actually did make sets, and they were pretty decent.
Yeah.
And that's how you know. And that's how you know this was not the same production block as Legopolis.
Yes, indeed. Because if you look at the Legopolis set, they had gray walls that had the roundels on them, which I think were reused from something else, and they had all the vines and stuff getting out. Yeah, that's an interesting note. Whereas the TARDIS, it was all about decay in Legopolis. Here it looks, fresh and new, like somewhere in the regeneration a fresh coat of paint got slapped on.
But then again, what we saw, the TARDIS was mostly just one room that was falling apart.
It wouldn't be the only time we saw the TARDIS regenerate when the Doctor did.
True.
Or more to follow more recent descriptions of it changing the desktop theme to match the new Doctor's mindset.
What
I guess.
What is this one? Coral?
What's this one? Coral?
Sounds
Don't
about right.
like it.
Yeah, this would be the Coral theme. The previous theme,
as we bring that up, I find a picture.
Oh. Speaking of coral, I guess we should talk about pinkish gray.
Yes.
Pinkish gray.
Go ahead, Bill, as you wanted this as I believe you had this anecdote.
Yeah. Earlier on, the Doctor's talking about the walls of the Zero Room, and he's describing it as a sort of pinkish gray. And you're sitting there listening to him like, there's no way it can be pinkish gray. He must be delirious because of his regeneration. And then they walk into the Zero Room, and you see the wall. And you're like, oh, that's what pinkish gray is. That
I believe
works.
your thought was that pinkish gray is not a color. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Pretty
it does.
much.
It's called a warm gray. Believe me.
No, I mean, that was the mental thought when...
Yeah.
That was the thought when you first saw the episode. It's like pink. You try to imagine pink and gray at the same time, and your brain comes up with error.
Yeah.
And then you see it, and you went, "Oh, okay."
Yep. We learned about the different types of gray. There's also different types of black, by the way.
Wouldn't it be a type of pink more than a type of gray?
Nope, it's called a warm gray. And then
Of
there's
course, the
cool
way that they
grays.
seem...
Isn't
course, they
gray
got this one
distinguished by the lack of hue?
No, there is hue to
Or
gray.
should I say the saturation being 0 and therefore the hue being invisible?
No.
Oh, wow,
You
we
make-
could go on about this forever, too.
And now we're starting Aaron's art blog.
But there is, there's also
Bill and
like
Aaron
warm.
discuss
There's
art.
also different types of blacks too. There's warm black. There's cold black.
Meanwhile, I'm
Oh,
gonna use
black.
some green over here.
And I'm going to paint a happy little tree. Just a happy tree right here.
It'll
Yeah,
be our little secret that doesn't exist. If you tell anybody, I'll kill you.
Hey, I have 2 degrees in art. I have to use them somewhere.
All I know is when I print out something in a grayscale, it does not come out pinkish gray.
Mine does,
No.
but that's because I use Adobe Photoshop Elements, which does not do CMYK printing.
Okay. Well, mostly the pinkish gray here seemed to be achieved by having a gray set that was backlit with pink lights.
Yes.
Yeah.
thus achieving the effect that they were looking for. It actually, at least by the picture Matt's having there, it comes out as a little bit lavender almost. Kind of a lavender
Yeah.
rose. Anyway, yeah, here you can see the scene where the doctor is levitating. Did you just have all these bookmarked from the last time we tried this?
No, I just happened upon them. They're all in one nice little cluster.
And as I said, I was never that impressed by the special effect, just because I think it wasn't the special effect itself; it was how they pulled it off. Seemed a little bit how Peter Davidson sold it didn't seem to satisfy me much when he did
I
the
can
whole
see what you
levitating
mean.
bit.
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, considering the time, it's still a pretty darn good effect.
No, well, yeah. What Randy's describing is pretty much the acting and direction rather than the actual SFX work.
Yeah, my only problem would be the directing, because they're like just pretend to be sleeping there, and now we're gonna
And
add
yeah,
in audio from later.
if if the levitating was described as something the Zero Room did, and he was described as actually just laying down and the room levitated him by its nature, he would have sold it perfectly by what he did. But you don't really get the impression that it's his mind doing any of that. You get the impression that he just lied down and started floating because of fizzy lifting drinks or something.
I thought it was a Douglas Adams reference.
Not
I don't
really.
think so.
That he
Actually,
got to hit the ground.
From the third book, that's how Arthur learns how to float. He falls down and he just kind of ignores the ground, I think.
He gets distracted and misses.
I don't know if the third book. Well, either way, you don't have to say the third book because they do describe it in the first book, which was out. I was going to say the third book I don't think would have been out by the time they were filming this, but the first book definitely was, and there is a line in the first book describing flight in the Hitchhiker universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it really doesn't seem like he's doing the art of throwing yourself at the ground and missing.
No, it does not.
He seems to try to pull it off like it's a Houdini trick in a way, and he just doesn't sell it to me.
Speaking of Houdini, we didn't mention it during the synopsis this time, but the end of this episode does set up perfectly for the Houdini episode of Destiny of the Doctor, in which the Master is still trapped in the collapsing Castravalva.
Or they mention it that's the last time that they had seen the Master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they kind
really
of describe that he's acting from there, doing fulfilling his plotting.
Yeah, really that could happen any time between this and the King's Daemons, which is the first time the Master comes back.
Is that's before Earthshock?
Master's
Yeah, it was before Earthshock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was before Earthshock because I remember Adric being there for that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, if Adric was in it, then yeah, it's pre-Earthshock.
Right. Earthshock was what? Was it like? I don't think it was the season finale, right? I think it was.
Yes, I think it was. It was either the season finale or the season premiere for the next series.
It was the same. It was the same season, so maybe it was the finale then. Of course, this being me, you're bringing up the list just to verify that. I really need to just bookmark this list because I go back to it several times a week.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
All right, season 19. Time Flight was the season finale. It was Castravalva, Fort of Doomsday, Kinda, The Visitation, Black Orchid, Earthshock, Time Flight.
Okay.
So wait, the King's Daemons isn't in there.
No, it's not.
Yeah, King's Daemons wasn't until the following season finale. So you're thinking of Turlo, not Adric.
Maybe.
Sounds right to me, yeah.
Yes, yes, maybe.
I don't know. It's been a couple of years.
Either that or Adric was there through block transfer computation.
He's there in the background. I know it.
He just walks on randomly on a thing that just holds up a sign that says "Fuck you, Tom Baker" and walks off.
There's a reference.
JNT might have allowed it.
Okay. So yeah.
Speaking of which, there will never be a better time to mention this, and we did not cover it during the news, but Tom Baker did give a recent interview, and he does describe the monsters upstairs in charge of, the bosses, his bosses, as you were at the BBC, as being worse than any of the monsters on screen. So there's nothing really newsworthy, but feel free to look it up.
I know there's animosity between Tom Baker and JNT, unresolved since JNT's dead now.
Yeah.
He does talk about specifically why he wasn't in the Five Doctors, and the fact that he probably would be up for something like that if it happened now.
Yeah, that was it. One of the reasons he didn't join Big Finish until now was the fact that the season or two of JNT that he had to put up with left such a foul taste in his mouth that he basically stalked away from Doctor Who and didn't look back.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what well, then again, he did give multiple reasons in the article for not being in the Five Doctors, so just feel free to look up the interview.
I'm sure there's a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest of which is that he wasn't going to put up with J&T's bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And it was too close to him, leaving the show, and there's a dozen reasons why he decided against it, but I also think it's something he also regretted a little because the show ended before he could actually come back for like a 30th anniversary or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually
anyway.
That quote is actually very similar. That quote is actually very similar to what Sarah quoted to me as Lala Ward saying about Tom Baker, is that he was worse than any of the monsters on screen.
Perfect symmetry. Back to the TARDIS sequences.
Well, of course, they can all laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Since they buried the hatchet.
Now that we've discussed decorating the set, there were some interesting. There were a good amount of callbacks in here, which is not uncommon for Regeneration. Pretty much, hey, by the way, this is the show that you've been watching for almost 20 years at this point.
Not far now, Brigadier, if the Ice Warriors don't get there first.
Yep. He calls Tegan both Vicky, the first Doctor Companion, and Joe, the third Doctor Companion.
Mm-hmm.
And refers to Adric as Jamie
mentioned
once.
The recorder. Mm-hmm. Oh, I did not hear that. Okay.
Yeah, he did refer
to
it
was
as
actually
Jamie.
Following that line I just quoted. It's, oh dear, we've wandered down the wrong corridor. We must be near the main TARDIS drive now. Jamie, run! Yeah, he's completely lost who people are at that point.
Right.
But yeah, it's the other ones were just asides where his brain slipped.
Yeah.
That was back when he was still, largely delusional. Not as delusional as 6, but we'll discuss that next week.
Next week.
And we've mentioned the recorder. I believe there were some scenes with the scarf coming unraveled.
Yeah,
which we did cover last time, that it's actually not the real scarf, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a prop scarf that was stitched together from the tattered remains of previous stunt scarves that had taken one for the episode. So
they could just quickly pull those together and just made that out of it.
Yes. It helped that in the last 2 seasons that the Doctor scarf was all the same color. So they were just able to whip that up and probably crudely stitch it together to have Peter Davidson unravel it. And of course they destroyed the Doctor's waistcoat, but the 4th Doctor had done that to himself. Mm-hmm. And apparently the only part of the costume... Go ahead.
He is wearing the same shirt that he was wearing in the last season as the of the 4th Doctor.
That's what I was about to mention, that's the only survivor from the Tom Baker era is the question mark collared shirt. Yeah. Thanks to JNT's fascination of making the Doctor wear question marks. A decision, and I believe that shirt would continue on with Colin Baker.
Yes,
only
Colin
to be
Baker would.
And then
But it did
Sylvester
not fit
McCoy would
Sylvester
replace
McCoy.
it completely. Yeah.
You would
Going
replace
with
it
a
completely
question mark
with a
jumper.
knitted
Jumper.
Th-
Yeah.
jumper, and then
Thankful-
also the question mark handle of his umbrella.
Which he wouldn't get
Thankfully-
until later seasons. His
Thankfully,
original
prob-
umbrella did not have the question mark.
Yes,
That-
that one was from a fan.
Yes, it was a gift from a fan.
Thankfully, either the budget department or the decorating department put their foot down and did not allow J&T to do something like covering the TARDIS in question marks.
Thank
Oh,
goodness.
God.
Can you imagine how gaudy that would have been?
Although we would eventually get one covered in Seals of Rassilon.
Yeah, that's because Peter Segal was under no such constraint. Still, it still wins the award for most awesome console room ever, although the new ones are getting kind of
Absolutely.
close.
Yeah.
They're getting closer. But also, we have our reasons for why there's Seal of Rassilon everywhere, because for change, the Doctor's not ashamed of his past for a little while.
Yep.
Until the war.
Until
And
the
then
war.
he becomes even more ashamed of his past.
And he's quite possibly married to the Lord President at that point.
Or very closely attached.
Dream on. Dream on.
Dream on Bill, but yeah, very closely attached and affiliated.
Yeah, if they were married sometime in the Doctor Who thing, then Warrior's Gate would have been the divorce. Doctor, I'm leaving you and going off on my own in this other dimension. Screw you, Romana.
I'm taking the dog, by the way.
Yeah, she took the dog.
Oh well, thankfully I have a second dog.
No, that was the second
No,
dog.
that was the last Romana.
That,
I mean,
that was the second
no.
dog? I thought you said another
It
one.
was-
Well, he
no,
did
that-
gift another one to Sarah Jane, quote unquote.
Right, Mark III and then
Yes.
later Mark IV were gifted to Sarah Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Oh, the little tin dog.
would
Which
mean
is... They could still bring
This-
Canine back at any time.
They could, yes.
is K9 and Company officially a Fourth Doctor era or Fifth Doctor era story?
Neither.
Neither. It doesn't.
Like by which I mean which Doctor gifted the K9 to her, because
That's
They
the
don't
fourth.
say.
the fourth Doctor was kind of busy from that point on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really say,
But he
although
might
I
have dropped
believe
it
the
off with-
secret
well-
hush-hush thing was that technically it might have been the Master sending her one.
I
I
don't
doubt
see
it
why
because
that
the
would
Doctor
happen.
acknowledged it in
But yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
switched that continuity in current continuity, so yeah, it must have been one of the Doctors sent it.
Mhm.
yeah, we really don't know. As far as we know, it could have been the Eighth Doctor.
Hmm.
But at that point, at the point that it aired, was the Christmas of 1981, which was between the fourth and the fifth Doctors.
Well, the Watcher could have given it to her.
And it
Be the only
technically
one
wasn't
free,
was
considering
the
the fifth Doctor was not free for his entire run.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh
mean,
God, yeah! Imagine
could
Tegan. We can't take you back to. Damn it! I always do this every
Brisbane?
episode. I was going to say the name. Oh yeah, is
Heathrow.
that the no,
Bris-
Heathrow.
Heathrow? Thank you,
Heathrow?
thank
Yeah.
you, Andy. We can't take you back to Heathrow. I have to drop a robotic dog off to a girl I once knew.
The Doctor would have been dead so fast.
Yeah, she probably
I
would
mean-
have pulled a Cyberman rifle on him to that point.
I mean, I'm sorry. You would see that happen. I'm seeing this happen on like how it could have ended kind of thing.
How it should have ended.
See him, yeah, how it should have ended kind of thing. And then you just see the scene of the side of the TARDIS as the fifth Doctor goes flying back and slides down the wall of the TARDIS in a bloody smear as Tegan stomps off into the.
Although
And then Nyssa turns to Hedrick and go, "Well, that ended well."
And then the sixth Doctor comes up and tries to strangle them both.
Again, covering next week.
was Which episode was it where Tegan left the first time? Was it the
I
King's
think it was.
Demons?
No, I think it was
No.
time. It was Time Flight.
So it could have been between seasons 19 and 20 if he went on adventures off screen and during that gap.
Oh yeah, that's right. At the very end of
It's
Time Flight,
possible.
yeah.
It's possible because I know Tegan came back for Arc of Infinity,
Yeah.
which also coincided with the death of her cousin because Tegan has like the worst, suckiest life ever on the TARDIS.
She only seems to ever find the TARDIS when a family member dies.
Finding the TARDIS requires a blood sacrifice. Anyway, yeah. So the scenes on there were pretty good. The cloister bell gets reused here, which was first heralded in Legopolis. It was introduced to us in Legopolis, and I mentioned at the time it was used wrong. And you see why I mentioned it was used wrong, because it's used properly here for grave emergencies to the TARDIS. Oddly enough, it, of course, never rang back in third serial.
Edge of Destruction.
Oh,
Edge of Destruction,
yeah.
yes.
I'm trying to remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah, which would have actually been the proper time to introduce the cloister bell, but of course they hadn't thought of it yet.
I would add also, not only did they not
They
think of it yet...
They were introducing too many things about the TARDIS in that episode to bother with the cloister bell.
Now,
as I was trying to say here really quick, not only would it be hectic to try and introduce something like that, not only did they not even think of it at the time, but also it seems to me that the TARDIS gradually grows bigger and bigger as the series goes on, to be honest.
it does, and that actually makes sense considering the fact that the TARDIS is a life form. If you think of the TARDIS like a plant-like organism, it grows limbs, basically, that are the corridors. And the architectural configuration thing where you delete rooms is essentially pruning. Because later on, they also had to jettison the swimming pool in Paradise Towers because it had sprung a leak. And apparently a new one has grown back since then.
Yep.
Imagine telling David Whittaker that a dying star would be kept inside a room in the TARDIS. Would have blown his mind.
He would have been frothing at the mouth going, what the heck are you thinking about? Of course, then again, we'd also have to tell him that apparently the TARDIS involves fuel rods.
That's enough to send anybody frothing at the mouth and falling over.
But yes, so do we have anything else to say about those particular scenes in the TARDIS?
Not particularly, and we should probably get moving on.
Everything there.
Okay, let's move on to Castravalva, the arrival. Basically, there's a lot of Nyssa and Tegan walking through the forest in this one. Go ahead.
Okay. This is one thing
where
this is one part where in many ways the Christmas Invasion and Castravalva have a lot of similarities, what with the failing regeneration and everything. Here is where I disagree with the criticisms of Castravalva for having the Doctor out of it because of Tegan and Nyssa being such a driving force during the Doctor is in the Zero Cabinet, where they're essentially carrying the episode on their own, and it's pretty much the strongest feminist moment that we've really had in the series to this point, where there are two women who are planning, coming up with ideas, and physically doing the work to get from point A to point B, which is where, I won't dwell on it, which is where I feel the failings of the Christmas Invasion are, which Randy disagrees with me.
I liked it. I liked pretty much all the reasons why you said, Bill. I actually liked some of the comedy in it. It's your typical cheesy '80s comedy with Nyssa falling in the river and the wheelchair taking off on its own and sparking as it falls into the water. Short circuit.
Those scenes I didn't mind. It was actually the scenes later that I started to get on with it kind of feel.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it that much is the fact that when they start climbing up the mountain, coming back down, and going back up again, starts to just be a pest. But thankfully, the going back up again was sped up a bit.
It is to note here that it is over the course of these scenes that Nyssa adopts what would become her costume for the rest of the Fifth Doctor era. First thing in the TARDIS, she changes from the fairy skirt-like thing into a pair of pants,
Yep.
which would stay with her. At one point, she gets rid of the big, fluffy, poofy overcoat thingy.
Mhm.
And then somewhere along the way, she loses her hair ornament.
Probably in the mud.
Somewhere in there, I think it gets caught in a tree. Anyway, between all that, by the time they reach Castravalva, she's pretty much dressed as she will be for the rest of the series.
Which is kind of cool. You get to gradually. She kind of changes over time, like, because she's one of the companions where I actually notice her costume change.
Which is weird because John Nathan Turner is known for
Never
industry
changing.
standardizing
Uniforms.
his costumes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also
But-
Tegan. Tegan changes her hair later on in the Fifth
I
Doctor's
think.
run.
Oh, I think that's when she leaves the TARDIS and comes back. I think,
Yeah,
right?
when she
Yeah,
comes back, she has the
change-
shortcut hair.
Her outfit
Mhm.
changes after the break because she spends the entire first series that she's in here in her air stewardess outfit, and between season 19 and 20, she gets back to Heathrow on time, but the events that she's witnessed with the Doctor leaves her so flustered and unsettled she winds up getting fired as an air stewardess, so therefore has no more right to wear the uniform as of Arc of Infinity. Like I said, Tegan lives in suck.
Right.
She's kind of
Although
like she's kind of like the butt monkey for like the entire Fifth Doctor era because everybody she knows dies. And her life basically goes horribly wrong. I'm surprised she doesn't see the Doctor as this huge curse on her existence.
Except for the fact that he's the nicest guy she's ever known.
True. Yeah, could you imagine if it was the Sixth Doctor that picked up Tegan?
Oh god.
Oh, she would rather than have none of that. She would have probably been gone in a heartbeat.
Just saying, you know.
Yeah, things would not have gone very well.
Yeah, I think that might have been one of the reasons that Tegan was opted out in Resurrection. It's like, yeah, those two won't go over well. Let's get rid of the companion. But yeah,
Imagine
Yeah,
if 11 called her a gobby Australian, what would 6 have called her?
yeah. Anyway, yeah, the scenes, you get to see Nyssa show a little bit more of her technological background in both here and the Castravalva bit, because she goes on a bit about telebiogenesis and other stuff. She starts establishing herself as the brains. Ignoring the
Although on a
Doctor.
similar route, Tegan does show some of her knowledge of planes and such as she's talking about when they're trying to figure out how to get the TARDIS to work. She kind of refers to it as, as someone knowledgeable about planes would trying to get an alien piece of equipment to work.
Here goes the landing!
Well, as technologically advanced as Nyssa is, the TARDIS is still several degrees more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even Adric, who was this mathematical genius and was hand-trained by Tom Baker's Doctor, can only figure out bits and pieces. You know? And that's because the Doctor physically trained him on it, And his species is particularly adaptive.
I'm curious, was there any benchmark comparison of that for Zoe? Because Zoe was also a character very driven by her knowledge of technology and things of that nature, but I don't know offhand of any scenes of her dealing with the technology in the TARDIS.
Not particularly.
Alas, a good chunk of there's still a good chunk of Zoe's era that's gone as well. I think like the first half of it.
Yeah, so unless we actually find some of those missing episodes, a lot of us probably won't do it and know about it unless they did a lot of research.
But
I could
I
stand it.
believe, other than holding a role similar to Nissa and Adric as being, the explanation person, I don't think she ever touched the TARDIS console other than to climb on it in a cat suit.
Fair point.
That suit. Anyway.
Um,
So now that
Yeah,
we've talked about the women and their clothing,
oh, we didn't even talk about Leela. Leela,
I
who
liked her
was
Victorian dress.
Leela is,
Well, I
Leela
was
is
going
so
to
out
say-
of left field in this discussion.
Leela is feminist and yet at the same time sexist, because there she is,
Loincloth.
the female filling the action male role.
Mm-hmm.
But
In
she's also
Doctor
doing it in
Who.
a skimpy loincloth.
Yeah, in a leather, basically in a leather bikini that they had to sew onto her.
Which, to be fair, John Nathan Turner probably would not have had any problem with, considering the next female companion we'd get and her main role.
Probably
in
he
the
would have said, "Make it
series.
skimpier."
Yeah,
Anyway,
but we'll talk about that
that's
next week. Maybe.
Boom, boom, boom.
anyway. So then we get through the woods, we get to Castravalva, and we get to the hunting party, which I say is the most ridiculous costumes in this entire thing.
I say, but it was interesting to look at.
It's like they were trying not to be offensive as possible while still having them dressed as savages.
Well, to me, I mean, I understand alien culture, alien outfit, but still, it would be like going hunting dressed in like the full Native American headdress going down the back and everything like that was really only used for ceremonies. And that always kind of bugged me.
Does Matt have an image of it already?
I've got an image up, yes. I got two
Okay,
guys in
never
the
mind.
bush, one of them pointing.
I
I'm
was gonna say,
still
I've
not
got
seeing
one,
that.
but if you don't need it, I'll.
And their giant egg heads and their fluffy feathers sticking out of it.
The second I saw this costumes, I'm just like, oh jeez.
Hot cheese.
I mean, it could have been worse. I think I mentioned on our failed attempt, I think I mentioned it as a parting shot, what Doctor Who would have been like if they had decided to go with the Batman Lost in Space era grade of camp.
Yeah. Now, that said, just the fact that it was a hunting ritual and not just hunting kind of explains that enough for me to buy, enough for me to suspend my disbelief.
No. No.
And I think
Let's just say that Randy likes to nitpick these particular silly
I
costumes.
think one of you also had the idea that the Master dressed him up like that so he'd have something to laugh at.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I made that statement.
Yeah, I think Randy made this statement, and I kind of dragged it out even further into more detail. Just like, yeah, okay, so you're going to go for the ceremonial hunt. Here, wear these.
Yep.
No, you look great. Now go out and hunt. Shitheads.
Either that or Adric created it as a flag for the Doctor that something should not be right, but the Doctor was too sick to catch on to it.
From a production standpoint, I think it was kind of there to fuck with the audience. Like, oh, are we getting these crazy multicolored aliens? Nah, they're humans in stupid outfits.
Yeah, we then
Yeah.
finally get some decent shots, and it's like, aww.
Because, yeah, those are just really ridiculous. Is that a freaking flower pot on the top of that one? So what? They're trying to be Alien Devo now?
Probably.
I like to see what their version of Whippet is like.
Are we not men? We are hunters.
By the way, if you want, and I'll just send you the image I have in case you want it, because it's a good image including whoever was leading the hunting party as well, I think.
Yeah, I found these outfits to just be a little over the top for me.
Now that one looks like they're trying to advertise some sort of cereal with that kind of
Yeah,
Acrylic color.
Yeah, I'm
I
looking
thought
at that
so.
picture and going, "There's colors found in nature."
They're trying to advertise for Fruit Loops.
Yes, I got this ceremonial headdress by killing the amazing puce bird.
The yellow fringe whopper.
The Mulvitress.
Rare little blighters.
Oh, wait, that's right.
Absolutely hate them.
He's dangerous. That's the universal color for danger.
The rarely seen dance of the poison arrow frog.
And you notice he has like a freaking power symbol on his mouth. Danger, electricity, 50,000 volts from my mouth.
Maybe they wear that so that any animals that come by won't eat them because they'll think they're a poisonous frog.
Okay. I think I've got it. So what they were waiting for was them all to get into line and go, "It's fun to stay here at Castravalva." It's
God, I hope
they
it's
just got a little
design.
miscommunication and forgot which one was supposed to be the fireman and which one was supposed to be the...
I forgot to tell you that I should probably be leaving here about noon midnight since I have to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, and we shouldn't actually be running that late
We
because...
should really be ramping down about this point anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should be wrapping up
Okay.
pretty soon. So
let's deal quickly with Castravalva itself, and then
Yeah.
we'll deal quickly with the ending, because I have one anecdote for the ending, and then we'll go on to final thoughts and ratings. If we're over by 5 minutes, will it hurt you that bad, hon?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
I'll try not. I'll try to rush it. Okay, so at Castravalva proper, it becomes very obvious that they're setting the librarian up as the baddie. He even looks vaguely like the master. Matt, do you have a picture of the librarian?
there.
He's also the only person in black in the entire town.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody else is wearing pastels, which is very 80s of them.
Or white, I think, in the case of the Portreeve and maybe a few others.
I thought the
What?
Portreeve was in kind of a pink.
I don't know what the...
No, he's in
Maybe-
white.
Maybe
Okay.
it was pinkish white.
Maybe. Anyway, yeah, they're obviously setting him up to look like the bad guy. Yeah, in retrospect, it's rather obvious that he's a bit of a red herring. But still, you can kind of buy the fact that he might be the bad guy.
And in
And,
retrospect, we can also tell that his attitude is because he knows something's wrong, but he doesn't know what it is.
Yeah. And,
So
you know,
he's suspicious of
everybody else
everybody.
is, you know, giddy, happy, calm, collect, at peace. They're all very zen, and he's glower and frown and Mr., you know, Mr. Down in the dumps.
Mm-hmm.
He
Um,
even has a few lines to make it look like he's secretly in charge and the Portreeve is just his hostage, even though that's not actually the case.
Yeah, it was more red herrings they were bringing out for him to be the bad guy.
You can't
like
see
I
the
said, he
Portreeve,
looks vaguely
old
like
men
Anthony
in their
Ainley.
sleep.
Not enough to fool me.
Enough to think. Well, you remember the master is a master of disguise, so it was enough to fool me.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say
but-
I did not Matt mentioned in our non-recorded discussion that the Portreeve was fairly obviously the master to him. Whereas even if I'm like, unless I'm looking for Anthony Ainley's forehead, I don't see it.
Oh, I
And,
saw
and
it
you got to remember
instantly.
when I first saw these, I was 9.
Yeah. I first saw these, I saw them when I was, what? In my 20s?
Somewhere in there.
My early 20s?
Because I don't think you saw these till after I met you and introduced you all to Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I hadn't seen this. I saw this I think when I was like 3 or 4.
I think I saw these in 07 at the latest, I want to think.
Yes, I'm officially Matt's pusher, by the way. I pretty much basically gave him the first one free for Doctor Who, and then
Then
put
I
him
went
on the
off and
path.
found a big collection on my own.
Brought him on the path. Anyway, so they're obviously setting that up, and then you get to the big reveal at the end, and it turns out that he's not only not the bad guy, he turns out to be the hero at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because he's the one that destroys the web. You made us, man of evil, but we are free now.
I've got to say, looking at like the images of his costume and such, you expect him to be like this Monty Python character that just does something ridiculous and over the top.
Yeah, if they hadn't used him a couple of seasons earlier, I would wondered if they would have gotten John Cleese to do this. Could you imagine John Cleese as the librarian?
No, not really.
In that uptight role that he occasionally has.
But it might have been a little too
John
hammy.
Cleese do serious. I've seen John Cleese do serious. I've seen him in a few things where he's done things seriously. He tends to play uptight characters.
And John Cleese was the villain of City of Death.
He wasn't the villain. He was just that art commentator in City of Death.
Because the fact that it is here means that it shouldn't be. And all of a sudden, all three characters walk in and the TARDIS disappears. Brilliant.
Yeah, but mind you, he just did that because he was actually at the BBC at the time, and Douglas Adams basically said, "Yo, we're filming Doctor Who. You want in on this?
You want in on this little cameo? It's just
kind
one
of a
line,
Christmas treat
man."
for our viewers." And John Cleese is like, "Great."
And then they then they film a little blooper with him and Tom Baker, where Tom Baker doesn't have a pen.
Anyway, so yeah, they revealed him as the hero, where he saves everybody, and it was kind of a bit of a moment of awesome, kind of a zero to hero moment.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went from not liking the character to liking him a great deal in those last like 15 minutes where he's dealing with the Doctor. And he realizes the same thing that the Doctor does, that the histories are all wrong, or that the histories have that little anachronistic. And you can watch as it just dawns on his face. This is a very good actor, by the way. I really want to know who did this role. Because you can watch as he realizes it, and you can almost see the inner thought of, damn it, why didn't I see this before?
Mm-hmm.
So then the Master shows up, and he is Captain Cheese. He is cheesier than he was in Legopolis. He is he basically
and he's not
reveals
very
the disguise
smart.
and immediately takes a bite out of the scenery.
Yeah.
He's just, it's like, for the final meeting of the Doctor and his master. Did someone order a large ham?
I still can't get over, and this is like, it's held together by strong force interaction. His response is to pick up a fire poker and start slamming it on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's not exactly at his sanest. This is kind of the Master's insane period. He needs therapy.
It actually made Dave Sims' Master a little bit more, kind of gelled that a little bit better with me. Huh?
John Sims?
John Sims, sorry.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, this is kind of the point that the Master needs help because he's addicted to killing the Doctor at this point. He's had a taste of it from Legopolis, and all he wants is another bite. This is why he spends the next 2 series basically going, kill the Doctor, kill the Doctor.
I might add, my web!
Yeah, he is so over-the-top cheesy. The only way that line would have been better if it had been belted by Brian Blessed. So yes, the plans all go awry. The Master does his cheesy moment of Khan, and they're all escaping. By the way, the actual layout for Castravalva, especially as seen in these last few minutes, was inspired by an M.C. Escher painting.
Yeah. I mean,
you can, yeah, but I mean, they actually mentioned that in the production notes, so that's kind of cool.
Oh.
That they managed to get it that well. It was basically the writer stared at an M.C. Escher painting and basically had the basic plot of the episode pop into his head, and that would have been Chris Bidmead, if I recall.
Yeah.
What did you think of it? Just in those particular scenes in particular, where everybody's going multiple directions and they're showing different shards of what's going on in Castravalva at the same time.
Some of it worked. Some of it was kind of a little bit. I think they tried doing what they could with what they had at the time, but it didn't quite work out anymore.
I think if they had a bit more budget for the set, it could have sold it a little better. But for what they had, I think they sold it fairly well.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought some of it seemed a little too digital, which was kind of bothering me, but I dealt with it.
Yeah, where it broke apart into pixels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a little too digital for me. That was a little, look what we could do with digital, yeah. So then we get to the end of it where the Master's, apparently defeated and apparently his TARDIS breaks down. But we never actually see the Master after he goes down screaming, "My web."
Yeah, he gets pinned between the people of Castravalva, and then the whole thing just closes in.
Yep. And that's the end of everybody. And the final scene there has kind of an interesting anecdote. The fact that Adric's character was written as supposed to be kind of pale and looking unwell, as he had been, basically had his energy zapped by the Master's power lines for all this time. And Matthew Waterhouse, Adric's actor, manages to accomplish this very well, completely by accident. You see, he had been out drinking the night before and was seriously hungover when they did this episode. And I mean seriously hungover. The end of it, he had been drinking too much Campari. So while the cameras were filming the Doctor and Tegan in the conversation about who landed the TARDIS, looking at this tilted TARDIS, Waterhouse was actually being sick behind a tree.
Ew.
The other actors, to their credit, continued acting despite it so the take could be used. Because, the BBC was very strict on, as little takes as possible for that.
Yeah, it wasn't like the 60s where they could have no more than 2 edits per episode at times, but it wasn't like today either.
Yeah. Also, I was right. This series had actually shifted its traditional time slot to a twice weekly Monday and Thursday slot. So this was a 4-parter. It aired over 2 weeks.
I forgot about that.
I knew there was something funky with the lineup. I couldn't remember if they had gone to double episodes, like, the 45 minutes or what, but no, they'd just gone to twice a week. Because they were coming off Tom Baker, which, was tremendously popular.
So I decided to wear the season out even faster.
Yeah. No, I want. Maybe that has to do with the fact that the ratings started plummeting at this point.
It's quite possible.
People didn't have time to watch twice a week.
Yeah, and they were also looking for it on Saturday afternoon, and it wasn't there. Anyway, another small thing to note, that in episode 3, the role of the Portreeve was credited to Neil Toynay. Neil Toynay is an anagram of Tony Ainley, Anthony Ainley. And this itself was a kind of an in-joke, as the Master used to use all kinds of anagrams for his name back in the Third Doctor era.
Which was also referenced in the name of Tremas in Keeper of Traken.
Yep. Although that was also kind of a red herring, but it was kind of a red herring that turned out not to be a red herring. Because when Tremas was Tremas, he wasn't the Master. Anyway, we'll have to discuss that if we ever get to do Keeper of Traken. Or did we?
Yep.
What?
We did not.
Okay.
I still have not watched that episode.
Okay.
We have it on VHS, so I watched it almost religiously.
Yeah, I have to pick it up some point. So this leads us to our final thoughts. Matt?
Final thoughts. There are some effects that don't work, but I blame that to age and low budget. There are still just as many effects that really do still hold up, and there are some pretty decent sets, and especially the TARDIS set and the very simple but very heavily used Castravalva set. Um,
Okay.
Anthony Ainley is a huge ham, and he lives up to it in this particular story at the end.
I think this is one of his hammiest, actually.
Um,
I think after this they kept telling him to tone it down, tone it down, tone it down,
uh,
until the final one, the final episode.
Yeah,
where
no
he
one
does
toned
go
it
a
down
little-
in Survival.
Yeah.
Peter
But then
Davison.
again, there you have Sylvester McCoy competing with him over who can chew the most scenery.
Peter Davison pulls off the Doctor pretty easily, and also is able to throw out references at the tip of the hat, and actually does really well while doing it. So that's
Peter Davison himself was a huge Second Doctor fan and was pleased to actually got to meet him just after getting the role.
Oh, and then he must have been pleased as punch with the Five Doctors as well.
Yes.
Um,
And to play the recorder.
trying to think anything else to mention. The story can get a little long at some points, but it does try to make up for it definitely by the last episode. Because then it's just one thing after another, just quickly clicking. So I think that's the last of my thoughts without giving a score yet.
Okay. Bill?
It's an above average in some ways episode. The visuals didn't particularly age well, but the writing I would say definitely did. Pretty good job all around, and not a whole real ton to say about it. That sums up really what we've already discussed. This is really a great episode for Nyssa and Tegan, whereas the Doctor's finding his feet and Adric's locked away. It's also a great episode for showcasing, everything about this new master that was relatively toned down in the previous serial, where here he just lets it all hang loose.
Seriously, yeah.
This is his moment.
Aaron?
I really enjoyed this one. This is one that I remember seeing on PBS, especially with the girls walking through the forest trying to carry the Doctor and what's left of the Zero Room that they've constructed. It's got all of my favorite characters in it. Adric is one of my favorites, so I like it. It's an above average episode for me.
Okay. Now to me. Yeah, this is one that I actually had on VHS. I had Legopolis, Castravalva, Kinda, and Terminus all on one VHS. I taped off WHA public television back in the day. And I watched this thing to the point of the tape almost breaking down. So I have seen this episode like hundreds of times. I really think that you cannot watch this one without watching Legopolis, though.
At least Legopolis.
They are really two parts of the same thing. You can skip Keeper of Traken and know what's going on, but you really need to see these two together. Otherwise, you're going to get a bit lost.
Like I've watched people talk about Castravalva, and it made no sense until I watched Legopolis, and that's what that's about.
Yeah, it's really part of the same story, and it's even more interesting that they filmed it so far apart. That it must have been really